The quiet hum of exclusivity filled the premium lounge at Boston Logan International. Soft jazz murmured from unseen speakers. Designers in pressed suits murmured into Bluetooth headsets. Leather shoes tapped faintly on polished stone. And in the farthest corner, where the light hit just right to cast shadows instead of warmth, Amara Langston sat motionless. Not just sitting stationed, like something wheeled in and left. Her wheelchair gleamed, sleek and minimal, designed to disappear beneath her. But it didn't. Nothing about her disappeared. Her presence was too poised, too sharp. She was all elegance and stillness, like a sculpture forgotten in a busy gallery. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the porcelain coffee cup on the table. It clinked against the saucer, then wobbled as she tried to steady it. No one looked up. No one offered a hand. She hated that part, how visible her body felt, and yet how invisible her whole self remained. Across the lounge, tucked near a staff vending area, the kind made for delayed commercial passengers who had wandered in by mistake, a tall man crouched beside a small girl with coils of hair pulled into two puffs. "Daddy, it's slipping again," she whispered, pointing to the backpack strap on her shoulder. He adjusted it without a word. Hands steady, gentle. The kind of hands that worked, that built things. They were calloused, and one finger bore a thin scar. His name was Isaiah Brooks, and his sweatshirt read Southie Auto in faded white across the chest. He looked like someone who didn't belong in a place with chandeliers or champagne carts, but he wasn't uncomfortable here either. Their flight had been canceled. He and his daughter, Nia, 8 years old and fiercely observant, were waiting on standby for the next one out. Nia leaned closer and whispered, "Why is that lady sitting all by herself?" Isaiah followed her gaze. She wasn't fragile. Not in the way people thought disability looked. She was refined, dressed in a pale rose blouse, tucked into tailored navy trousers. Her hair was a cloud of curls pinned at the back of her head, not a strand out of place. Beside her sat a taupe leather handbag. Her legs crossed neatly at the ankle, even though her feet didn't move. The coffee cup in her hands trembled again. Isaiah narrowed his eyes, not in pity, in attention. No aid near her, no family, no company, and no one noticing. He rose, brushing his palms on his jeans. "Stay here, baby. I'll be right back." Nia nodded and tucked a crayon behind her ear. Isaiah crossed the lounge slowly, not with urgency but intention. Not a man charging in to rescue someone, just a man who saw someone that shouldn't be alone. As he got closer, Amara saw his shoes first, worn Timberlands with cracked soles. Then his shadow fell across her, and she looked up. Their eyes met. She stiffened. She was used to men who approached her like a challenge, or worse, like a burden. They wanted a reaction, curiosity, attention. But this man didn't touch her or her chair. He crouched, leaving space. His voice was soft but clear. "Mind if I sit with you until your flight boards?" No condescension, no pretend smile, just presence. She blinked, lips parting slightly, unsure of what to say. Then, almost involuntarily, she gave a small nod. He pulled a chair from a nearby table, not waiting for her to perform social niceties, and sat down beside her. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. And for the first time in hours, Amara felt something uncoil inside her chest, something not quite hope, not quite safety, but company. Across the lounge, Nia had lowered herself to the floor with her sketch pad balanced on one knee. Her crayon scratched against paper, slow and thoughtful. Back in the corner, Amara wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. Steadier now. The silence between them was soft, spacious, the kind that says this moment can breathe. Isaiah glanced toward her, his voice quiet. "Private flight?" She nodded. Delayed. Something about fuel diagnostics. Her tone was polished, professional. A voice trained to command boardrooms, not lounges. Isaiah offered a slow smile. Ours was canceled. Economy. Hoping for a standby seat before nightfall. Amara followed his gaze to the little girl drawing. Your daughter? Nia, he said. She's 8. Thinks every vending machine is a 5-star buffet. That drew a flicker of amusement from Amara. Not quite a smile, but a curve at the edge of her lips. I'm Amara, she offered. Isaiah, he replied, and held out his hand. She looked at it, hesitating, but there was no hesitation in him, just warmth. So she reached. Her hand was cool and fine-boned. His was rough and sure. People don't usually talk to me, she said, eyes drifting, unless they want something. He didn't flinch. No update, she added. No favor, no headline. Isaiah only nodded. I saw your hands shake, he said simply. Figured maybe you could use someone nearby. Her gaze sharpened. Not in offense and surprise. Most people noticed, but only to look away. It's nerve damage, she said. After an accident. Recovery's been slow. You don't owe me an explanation. She studied him, not suspiciously. More like someone waiting to see when the moment would fall apart. But it didn't. Across the room, Nia stood and tiptoed toward them, holding something behind her back. Amara saw her first and gave a soft nudge to Isaiah's arm. He turned as Nia approached, shy but determined. I made you this, she said, offering a small torn piece of paper. Amara looked down. A child's drawing, a wheelchair, a man crouched beside it, a little girl in the middle holding both their hands, crayons in her pocket. Amara stared. Then something caught in her throat. She reached out carefully and took the drawing like it was a delicate gift. It's beautiful, she whispered. Nia grinned. You looked lonely. Now you're not. Amara turned to Isaiah. Her eyes had softened, rimmed with something she hadn't allowed herself in a long time. And just like that, something cracked open. Something that had been sealed shut beneath layers of poise, expectation, and silence. She looked back at the picture, then slipped it carefully into her bag, as if it meant more than her passport. Isaiah didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The story had already begun. The rain had started outside. Not a storm, just a soft, deliberate drizzle that tapped gently against the airport's towering windows like a distant lullaby. Inside the lounge, time stretched. Amara sat holding the drawing as if it anchored her to something she hadn't let herself feel in a long-time presence. Nia had crawled into the chair beside her dad, legs tucked beneath her, sketchpad back in her lap. Her eyes flicked between crayons and faces, composing her next picture like a quiet little composer of moments. Isaiah hadn't said a word in several minutes. He just sat beside Amara, not performing patience but embodying it as if this place, this moment, was exactly where he belonged. Amara glanced sideways at him. She trusts you quickly, she said softly, watching the way Nia leaned against his shoulder. Isaiah followed her gaze. Nia's got a radar for energy. Picks up what most grown folks ignore. If someone's hurting, she feels it before she understands it. Amara nodded slowly. That's rare. Most people only see what you show them. Most people, Isaiah agreed, aren't really looking. Amara exhaled a quiet breath that seemed to take something with it. Attention. A thought. Then she asked, barely above a whisper, what happens when your flight gets called? Isaiah looked at her. The question wasn't about departures. Not really. She was asking about the end of this moment, this accidental, uninvited connection. We board, he said gently. And the world keeps moving. Amara looked down at her hands, still holding the edges of Nia's drawing. And I go back to being alone. Isaiah didn't correct her, didn't feed her sweet nothings or protestations about fate or timing. He let her truth sit, the way some truths are meant to undisturbed. I used to think, she said after a long pause, that people avoided me because of the wheelchair, because they didn't know how to talk to someone sitting. Her voice was calm, too calm. But now I think they avoid me because they assume someone else is already taking care of me. She turned her eyes toward him. But they're wrong. Isaiah leaned forward, elbows on his knees. His voice was low, steady. You don't have to explain your life to me, Amara. She gave a small, hollow laugh. But I want to. And so, without a dramatic flourish or build-up, she began. She told him about the life she used to live, the one filled with meetings and photo shoots, keynote addresses and press releases, the one shaped by her father's expectations, the CEO's daughter, the polished brand, the walking legacy, then the accident, then the silence. The rooms full of people who looked away when they saw her, the therapists who saw only function, the aides who saw only schedules, the family who saw only the shadow of who she used to be and kept trying to polish her back to perfection. I stopped expecting kindness, she said quietly. It was easier than being disappointed every time. Isaiah's voice was nearly a whisper. Until today. She looked up. Yes, she said. Until today. They didn't notice the announcement blaring overhead, didn't look up when a flight was called, because something else had arrived, something quieter, something heavier. Hope. Nia stirred and sat upright. She yawned, blinking wide, then turned toward Amara and held up a second drawing. This one showed rain falling outside. A window. 3 stick figures inside, one tall, one small, and one in a wheelchair, all smiling. Did you draw this just now? Amara asked. Nia nodded. I like drawing people when they're happy. Amara touched her heart with her fingers, then smiled. It's lovely. A staff member in a dark blazer approached from the far end of the lounge, clipboard in hand, posture crisp. Miss Langston, he said, your aircraft is ready for boarding. The words sliced through the quiet. Reality arrived like an alarm clock. Amara inhaled, slow, reluctant. The moment tugged at her shoulders, like a coat she wasn't ready to wear again. She turned toward Isaiah. I guess this is it. He stood up with her, not formally, not out of obligation, but like someone who understood the weight of goodbye. Safe flight, he said. She reached for the wheels of her chair, gripped them gently, then stopped. A breath later, she turned back. Would you walk me to the gate? Isaiah didn't hesitate. Of course. They moved together, Amara, wheeling herself for the first time that day, Isaiah walking beside her, never touching the chair, only close enough to steady it if needed. Nia walked behind them, humming something soft, dragging her backpack like a sleepy puppy on a leash. The private gate corridor was long and glass-lined. Outside, the jet waited, sleek in silver, stairs lowered, door yawning open like a mouth ready to swallow her back into her scripted life. Amara stopped just before the threshold. The rain blurred the outside into soft watercolor. She looked at Isaiah. Her voice was quiet, tentative. I don't want to say goodbye yet. Isaiah was quiet, surprised not by the words, but by how much he felt the same. It doesn't have to be forever, he said. She gave a short laugh. That's what people say before they vanish. They stood in silence. Nia shuffled her crayons behind them. I'm not great at this, Isaiah admitted. Letting people in, talking like this. Amara turned her chair toward him, slowly. Then why did you come over? He looked down at his daughter, who was drawing quietly again. "Because Nia asked me why you were all alone, and I looked over and I saw myself." That made Amara pause. "I know what it's like to be in a crowd and feel invisible," Isaiah added. "To need someone to see you but not know how to ask." She blinked. Her voice trembled. "And now you're the only one I can't stop seeing." Nia, sensing the shift in the air, got up and walked toward Amara, wrapping small arms around her neck without asking. Amara froze, startled, then wrapped her arms around the girl gently. Her body stiffened, then softened. "I don't want you to go either," Nia whispered. Amara's heart cracked, not in pain, but in release. She looked at Isaiah again. "I don't want to go, but I don't know how not to." He crouched beside her, eye level once again, like when he first came over. "You said you stopped expecting kindness," he said. "Maybe this is where you start again." Their eyes locked. And for the first time in a long time, Amara reached down to her wheels and turned her chair slightly on her own, not away, not toward the jet, just toward choice. Isaiah stood, eyes steady on her. The staff member at the gate waited, clipboard still in hand. Amara turned to him. "Is there anywhere nearby to get coffee before I board?" Isaiah smiled. "There's a terrible machine near the vending area." She laughed, soft and surprised by herself. "Perfect." And together, not toward the jet, but back down the corridor, Amara, Isaiah, and Nia turned and walked away. Not as strangers anymore, but as something just beginning. The vending area was dim and unpolished, tucked behind a frosted glass door labeled "Authorized Personnel Only," though no one seemed to enforce that here. The floors were a dull gray tile, scuffed from years of suitcases and custodial carts. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed above like an old song no one remembered the lyrics to. But to Amara, it felt quiet in a different way, a welcome quiet. Not sterile, not hushed by politeness or pressure, but the kind of silence that gives you space to breathe. She wheeled herself slowly across the threshold, her palms pressing against the rims of her wheels, not with strength exactly, but with resolve. Her arms weren't what they used to be. Tremors flickered now and then, but each inch she moved was hers, unassisted, unrushed. Isaiah walked beside her, his hand never once touching the chair, not pushing, just present. Behind them, Nia skipped forward like the hallway was a stage built just for her. At the machine, Amara let out a laugh, short, breathy, surprised. "This is worse than I imagined." Isaiah grinned and cracked his knuckles before jabbing one of the faded plastic buttons labeled "Espresso, maybe." "Told you," he said. "Builds character." The machine groaned. Something hissed. Then a brown stream began dripping into two small paper cups with cartoon clouds printed on them. He handed one to her carefully, watching to make sure she had it steady before letting go. Amara held it with both hands, sipping slowly. It was bitter, almost metallic, terrible by every objective standard. She closed her eyes and said, just the right amount of regret." Isaiah chuckled. "To terrible coffee," he said, lifting his cup in mock salute. "To borrowed time," she replied, tapping hers against his. They sipped. The moment stretched, not awkward, just settled. Nia sat on the floor, crayons already scattered again, drawing something with intense concentration. Her tongue poked out slightly from the corner of her mouth. Amara watched her for a while. Then her voice softened. "You know, I haven't moved myself across a room in weeks." Isaiah turned toward her. "Not even from the bed to the chair," she continued. "There's always someone. An aide, a nurse, my father's people. I forgot what it feels like to decide where I go." Isaiah didn't interrupt, didn't comfort. He just nodded, letting the truth sit there between them like something sacred. And now? Amara's eyes stayed fixed on her cup. Now I remember, she said quietly. Isaiah looked at her. You look different than you did in the lounge. She raised an eyebrow. Different how? Lighter, like the mask came off. She thought about that, took another sip. Her eyes flicked toward the lounge beyond the hallway. I spent so long being the image, she said. The story my father needed to tell. Look at her even after the accident. She's still composed, still polished, still functional. She paused. But I haven't felt like myself in a long time. Isaiah leaned back against the vending machine, his arms crossed. So what is yourself? He asked. Not teasing, just curious. Amara's eyes drifted toward Nia. The little girl was now drawing a large sun above 3 figures. Someone who laughs like that more often, she said. They stood in quiet again. Then her phone buzzed in her lap. She looked down. The screen lit up. Dad priority line. Her smile faltered. Isaiah noticed. What's he expecting? Amara stared at the name. He's expecting me to be on the jet, quietly doing what I always do. No questions, no resistance. Isaiah watched her carefully. And if you don't? She didn't answer. Didn't need to, because she silenced the call. The sound of the button press felt louder than the ring itself. Amara's hands were trembling again, not from the disorder this time, from something else. Courage shakes too, Isaiah said quietly, without looking at her. She let out a breath that sounded suspiciously close to a sob, though no tears fell. Nia stood then, holding up her new picture. Look, she said. The drawing showed 3 people standing outside, beneath a soft gray sky. Rain was falling, but they were laughing. The figure in the wheelchair was now standing, holding hands with the others. The sun peeked from behind the clouds like it was waiting for permission to shine. Amara blinked down at it. It's beautiful, she whispered again. Nia beamed. You looked sad. Now you don't. Amara looked at Isaiah. And this time she smiled with her whole face. Not the polite press of lips she'd mastered in her public life, but something rounder, freer, Messier. Then she reached into her bag. Can I show you something? Isaiah nodded. She pulled out a leather folder, thick, black, the kind that smelled like expensive decisions. She opened it and flipped through a few pages. Press tours, partnership launches, PR calendar, photo ops, every week planned for the next 6 months. Isaiah took the folder and skimmed it. The pages felt cold, impersonal. Then Amara pulled a pen from her purse and drew one long line straight down the center of the itinerary. A slash. A break. I'm not going back, she said. Isaiah looked up. His face didn't show shock, just respect. What's next? Amara closed the folder and placed it aside. I don't know, she admitted, but I think I'd like to figure it out with people who don't expect me to be anything but myself. Isaiah gave a small nod. Then you're in good company. Nia yawned and leaned against her dad's leg. Did she miss her plane? She asked sleepily. Amara leaned forward, brushed a curl away from the girl's cheek. No, sweetheart, she said. I just changed destinations. Isaiah offered a hand not to steer her chair, not to fix anything, just to hold. And this time, she didn't hesitate. The jet was still there. It hadn't moved, hadn't blinked out of existence. Through the tall glass behind them, its stairway was still lowered, engines idling with clinical patience. The crew waited clipboard in hand, eyes scanning for a woman who would not return. But Amara wasn't looking out the window. She sat at the round table in the forgotten corridor beside the vending machine, a place that smelled faintly of old plastic and lemon floor cleaner, sipping lukewarm coffee like it was the finest roast from a Parisian cafe. Across from her, Isaiah leaned forward with his elbows on the table, his cup empty now, but still held in both hands. He wasn't waiting for her to speak. He was just there. Nia had curled up in a chair nearby, head nestled in the fold of Isaiah's hoodie, one arm wrapped around her crayon pouch like it was a teddy bear. She had fallen asleep mid-doodle. Her breathing was soft, rhythmic, grounding. Amara looked at them and then down at her phone. No new calls. No texts. Not even a voicemail. She hadn't boarded. She hadn't told anyone, and the world, apparently, had not noticed. Her father hadn't called again. That absence echoed louder than his voice ever had. "I don't know where I'm going," she said suddenly, her voice barely above the hum of the machine. Isaiah looked at her. "No one does," he said simply. She shook her head. "No, I mean, if I stay, if I don't get on that plane, I have no plan, no schedule, no assistants waiting with a clipboard, no keynote, no hotel suite, no team." Isaiah leaned back slightly. "That's not the same thing as being lost." Amara blinked. The words sat with her. Slowly, she nodded. For the first time in what felt like years, she wasn't performing certainty. She was simply honest. She reached into her bag again and pulled out the folder of the corporate binder she had slashed open an hour ago and set it gently on the table. "I spent 5 years making sure this was perfect," she said, tapping the leather cover. "Now it just feels heavy." Isaiah ran his fingers across the closed folder. "You know what I see?" he asked. "What?" "A story that's run its course." Amara exhaled. She didn't smile, not right away, but her shoulders fell a little, released. Then she said, "I haven't said this out loud to anyone yet, but I don't think I want to do this anymore. The business, the panels, the interviews, the whole performance of resilience." Isaiah didn't flinch, didn't encourage. He just nodded once, slowly. "What do you want?" he asked. "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I think it starts here." He tilted his head. "With bad coffee?" She laughed. "With honest people." There was a pause, long and wide, and filled with a kind of stillness that didn't demand to be filled. Then Isaiah said, "You ever been to Vermont?" Amara blinked. "What?" "Vermont," he repeated. "We're heading there. Small town. Quiet. My sister's place. She's got this big old house with a porch that leans too far to one side, and a dog that thinks she's a squirrel." Amara chuckled, caught off guard by the image. "She runs a little art studio on the side," Isaiah continued. "Paints, pottery, community projects for kids, stuff like that." He looked at her. "Maybe that's somewhere to go. Doesn't have to be forever. Just for now." Amara's smile faded into something more serious. "You're inviting me?" Isaiah shrugged. "I'm not offering answers. Just air, different air." She looked toward the window again, where the jet still waited. "I spent so long building a life that looked impressive on paper," she said. "But lately I feel like I've just been surviving inside it." Isaiah leaned forward. "Then maybe it's time to write something new." Amara looked at him. "Do you think it's reckless? Just leaving like this? Walking away from all of it?" He smiled softly. "Maybe a little, but most of the best things in life start with a little reckless." She laughed again. This one surprised her. Nia stirred, blinking herself awake slowly. "Did she miss her plane?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. Amara leaned toward her, brushing a strand of hair off her forehead. "No, sweetheart," she whispered. "I just decided to change flights." Nia blinked sleepily. "To where?" Amara looked at Isaiah. He didn't answer for her. And maybe that was the answer. She turned back to Nia. I'll know when I get there. Nia smiled, completely satisfied. Then she pulled out a new sheet of paper and began drawing again. Amara watched her for a long time, then looked down at her own hands. They were still trembling, but not with fear. With possibility. She took the leather folder, opened it one last time, and began tearing pages out, not all at once, just one at a time, slowly, quietly. She didn't shred them, she released them, like someone setting down the weights she no longer needed to carry. Isaiah didn't say a word. When she was done, she closed the empty folder, then slid it under the coffee machine like it belonged there among half-used sugar packets and vending hums. She turned to him. You sure your sister won't mind a stranger showing up? Isaiah smiled. You're not a stranger anymore. She paused, then said softly, Thank you for sitting down beside me. Isaiah held her gaze. Thank you for letting me. They stood Amara rolling herself this time, her motions slow but unassisted. Nia zipped her crayon pouch with a practiced flick and grabbed both their hands. Can we get snacks before we go? She asked brightly. Isaiah laughed. Of course we can. And together, man, woman, and girl, they walked down the corridor. No cameras, no speeches, no applause. Just 3 people. Going forward. Hours later, as dusk crept in over the city, a private jet took off from the runway, sleek, sterile, and silent, with an empty seat where Amara Langston was expected to sit. In the terminal, a cleaning staffer found a thick, black folder stuffed under a coffee machine. He opened it, saw the empty pages, and left it in the trash without a second thought. But far down the interstate, on a quiet road heading north, a car rolled steadily through the rain. Inside, a little girl slept, curled against her dad. A woman stared out the window at the dusk-soaked hills, and in her lap, still creased, still childishly bright, lay a crayon drawing of 3 people laughing under a sky that had just begun to clear. It wasn't the end of a story, just a different kind of beginning.